You're live. Why didn't you say you're live?
Well, we're live now. We are live in the studio, ready to uplift labor and much more. Happy International Women's Day, Jen.
Oh, thank you. I actually am wearing, my mom bought me these. They are earrings that are based on Ruth Bader Ginsburg's descent collar.
Ah.
So I actually wore that as an homage to International Women's Day.
Well, we have some really big news that I think we'll announce right now. Chris Hedges is going to be a part. Chris Hedges is going to be a part of our Pardon Assange telethon on Saturday, March 20th.
So very excited about that.
Pretty big deal.
Yes, it is.
Now, can we just get Dr. Cornell West to join? Because
he's dealing with a total nightmare right now.
He actually just got accepted to the New York Seminary. Video is super choppy. Okay, we're attempting to do 4K today.
Is that why it's choppy? Shouldn't it be better?
I don't know. John, how are we doing? How are we looking? Maybe it's just on Josh's end. So I just want to make sure if that's something that we're doing wrong.
I don't know. Something doesn't look as clear as it normally
does. No, I think it looks fine.
Okay.
It says it's good now. Okay.
Yeah, because all right, but I need to. Okay, no, it's good because we need to do this. Better now.
All right, Jen's happy now. So
I didn't like Thurgood's head being cut off.
Okay. Well, it is International Women's Day, and I guess.
Does that include Lulu?
Yes. Well, Lulu's a lady, and we're allowed to touch upon that. So, I hope everybody had a great weekend. Obviously, it's been just more of a roller coaster as we saw the. It looks like the 1.9 trillion COVID relief bill is going to pass. It has some good stuff in it. It has a lot of junk in it. There's a good child credit in it. Yes, that's from my understanding. Yeah, $3,600 credit per child. That's big. That's nice. Yeah, I mean, look, you got to take the good with wherever you can get it. It's not a total loss of a bill.
We're fighting for crumbs here, people.
$350 billion for local aid, including the distribution of the COVID vaccine, which obviously is a big deal. So you gotta, like I said, you've got to take the good with the bad wherever you can get it. But the truth is, there is a lot of bad in the bill. A lot of it is a giveaway, especially to private insurance and big pharma. The bill did absolutely nothing whatsoever for healthcare, did nothing whatsoever for the minimum wage. And of course, when it came to the $1,400 survival checks, they became means tested, and it looks like about 17 million people have been cut out from getting them. And apparently millions of those people could actually use those checks, and they're not going to get them. So it's, look, it's unfortunate that this is what it's come to, that everything has to be, dissected in a lab. We can't do anything, without it being, bureaucratized, if you will. When somebody says, I'm giving you a $2,000 check, why don't you just send the $2,000 check? See, this is the thing that doesn't make any sense. If you are above the threshold for getting the check, you are going to get it taxed out of your, on tax day anyway. So I really don't understand this idea of, why you feel the need to do that. And Josh, thank you for the super chat. Guys, if you want to do guys, if you want to do a super chat, you absolutely can.
Oh no, my tech skills. These are my tech skills. Yeah. Actually, no, we're going to get to see my graphic that I did for this today. I did actually do a Canva graphic situation. But I can, look, I am an artistic and crafty person. I am just technologically challenged. So once I figure out the app, I'm actually pretty good at design.
Well, that's good to know.
I mean, this is all, by the way, a lot of this is inventory, Wicked Gypsy.
So what we're doing now is obviously focusing on labor, which is an exceptionally important part of where we're going. We obviously have a very big story, of course, in Bessemer, Alabama. The Amazon factory workers there are attempting to unionize. Cory Booker and Jamal Bowman actually went down there this weekend in solidarity to show them support for
Cory Bush.
Cory Bush. Did I say Cory Booker?
Yeah.
Excuse me.
I was going to say.
With all due respect, Cory, I don't mean. I know.
I was going to say, is there something I don't know about?
Something that I didn't know about, but that would definitely be a big.
That would be news.
That would be a very. That would be huge.
Cory Booker?
Huge. But it didn't happen.
No.
So Cory Bush and Jamal Bowman did go to Bessemer, Alabama, of course, on the weekend of the anniversary of, I don't know how to technically say it, but Selma, you know, the 56th anniversary of
the Pettus Bridge.
Yes.
The William Pettus Bridge.
So that was the 56th anniversary. Look, you know, we've come a long way, but we still got ways to go. And
that was hardcore.
Yeah. Well, you know, a lot of people who think that they know what hardcore is today.
Yeah. That's the thing.
Not really understanding that there's so much more to it. And so now, you know, we continue along this trend of, you know, when are we finally going to achieve what we need to achieve as it relates to the labor movement? Because, you know, if they do unionize at the Amazon factory in Bessemer, Alabama, that would be a massive game changer.
It'd be huge.
Probably the biggest boomerang swing since Reagan fired the air traffic
it'll be the
controllers in
biggest,
1981.
definitely biggest labor thing.
So that's definitely something that I think would be a very big deal. But there is a little story that I did want to share with you guys that I think is very relevant to what's going on right now.
Okay, I feel like I should almost do like a Wayne and Garth, like a like we're gonna have like a history segment. There's gonna be a history lesson. He's into this.
So
he's into this.
My favorite president is Teddy Roosevelt, and he achieved obviously quite a bit of good in his day. One of the things that he did attempt to do was form a legitimate third party, closest thing we've ever come to in this country, when he formed the Bull Moose Party in 1912. There is a little caveat, though, to that story. What a lot of people don't know is that that was not where it began. Teddy Roosevelt actually did attempt to run in the Republican primary against sitting President William Howard Taft in 1912. And as it turns out, he ended up doing exceptionally well.
He primaried him. That's a pretty big deal.
That is. And Roosevelt ended up winning, I think they had 14 contests, 14 state primaries. And I believe Roosevelt won 11 of them. I'd have to check. But he absolutely crushed Taft. Crushed him. But the delegates, the pledged delegates, decided to go with Taft, despite what the popular vote was saying.
Imagine if they had super delegates.
All I can tell you is
we haven't advanced, is what you're saying.
So here is a circumstance where Teddy Roosevelt should have been the Republican nominee for president because it's what the people wanted, but because the delegates, the unelected bureaucrats, if you will, decided that they were going to still go with Taft, Roosevelt decided, well, screw you, I'm starting my own party. And that's what he did. But because he decided to do that, the vote ended up splitting down the middle. And Woodrow Wilson, Mr. I am going to screen Birth of a Nation as the first movie at the White House, among other things that he did in his wonderful term, you know, starting the Great War and, you know, a whole bunch of other wonderful things. He ended up becoming president. This never would have happened if Teddy was the rightful nominee of the Republican Party. You fast forward to 2016, and you have to wonder if all of the screwing around that the Democratic Party did on behalf of Hillary Clinton against Bernie Sanders, from constantly showing the super delegate counts on TV, from constantly having the endorsements come through when there wasn't even a debate. If Bernie had won that nomination, I'd like to think that he would have absolutely become president of the United States. And let's be even more frank. You know, if Debbie Wasserman Schultz didn't do the things that she did to put her thumb on the scale to make sure that Hillary had unbelievable advantages over Bernie Sanders, I'd like to think that if Hillary had won the nomination outright just by being the better candidate, that she would have won the presidency. There wouldn't have been enough of a split within the party for somebody like Donald Trump to sneak in. Now, I'm not saying that Donald Trump and Woodrow Wilson are comparative from a 100-year difference. However, you definitely have to identify that there was a significant problem at that time. So to think that it's unprecedented that these major political parties will take matters into their own hands against the will of the people, it's been done before, and it will be done again. So we have to recognize that all options need to be on the table, and I think that that's a good segue to what was a very big story today. Well, it is still a big story, is this bill HR 1, which is the Voting Rights Act that they're trying to push.
Yeah.
The only problem is that this is a bill that, you know, you talk about overturning Citizens United. What would be the point of doing that if you're already in a situation where it's not going to change anything, you're looking at still horrifically unfair campaign finance rules for the two major parties. You're basically trying to push out the third parties. Look, we're Democrats, but that doesn't mean that other parties shouldn't have the opportunity to have their voice heard.
I'm so begrudgingly a Democrat, and more so by the day. Like every day, I'm just disgusted with them.
It does, unfortunately.
I really am disgusted with them.
It leads to a much bigger problem, which is, what is democratic? And the more that the people's voice rises up, the more the establishment attempts to step in and say, well, now we have to do this to you. Now we have to do that to you. And so by doing that, they are essentially saying, no matter how much momentum you get, we'll find a way to pull out the rug from underneath. And so that's something that I think we really have to make a conscious effort to try to stop, because the history is there. But right now, everyone is distracted by X over here and Y over there.
Okay, we're spending too much time talking about things like Dr. Seuss and Potato Head and now Pepe Le Pew, apparently, which I actually always did think that Pepe Le Pew was way too handsy.
Okay.
I mean, I kind of did, but whatever. It's a cartoon. I don't care. I mean, but that's what we're talking about. These are the things that people are talking about. They're not talking about important work issues, because the Democratic Party is not the Labor Party anymore. They have not been the Labor Party for so many years, and yet Labor is still stuck voting for the Democrats as if that's the better option, when in reality, it's not the better option.
No, it's a lesser of two evils option.
But it's not a Labor Party. We don't have a Labor Party in this country, and that's hugely problematic.
And that's what we're trying to change. And I do think that, when you get right down to it, we can make these necessary changes, but there has to be a party of labor. There has to be a movement towards labor.
They keep distracting us with all the political correct nonsense, and they keep separating people based on things that are completely irrelevant to how working people need to be treated. And so these things are all distraction. All of those issues are distractions. It's so frustrating. There's no labor.
And a great example of that would be the whole story today that propped up because the ACLU says that trans women are women. Why don't you share a story of a friend of ours and what that friend is going through right now, being discriminated against, even though they have transitioned, but because biologically they were born something else.
I mean, people are, it's just, this is just so, it's ridiculous. Like, it's just so ridiculous. And we do have a friend who's going through something right now and is having issues with professional licensing and stuff based on being trans and based on just, I just do not for the life of me understand how this is an issue for people. The only time where I think it's remotely even within the realm of what we can discuss is when it comes to sports. And I do think that there is something that is going to have to be addressed there based on how long somebody has been transitioning and how long they've been on hormones,
that's something that
or whatever. I mean, there would have to be some sort of thing, but with the exception of sports issues, it's just unbelievable to me that we're still having this discussion.
And you brought up that point that, depending on when you actually go through your transition, that it actually does make sense to have that conversation.
Yeah, there needs to be a certain amount of time that people are undergoing hormones before and then there's an assessment as to that person. I mean, there's got to be a way to do this. There's even been a study done that showed that trans women that had been on estrogen and had been transitioned, their ability was significantly different than their ability was when they were living as a man. And so there was that difference. So that would make them be then competitive as women. But there has to be, you can't just decide one day, I'm trans, I'm a woman, and then go compete the next day as a woman. There has to be some sort of
and then you have the extremism where you have somebody like Steven Crowder who does his his publicity stunt going into a Planet Fitness dressed in drag and acting like he's being discriminated against, where we all know that this is being done because it's for shock value.
It's just so mocking and so ridiculous.
That's the kind of person who's doing it because they want attention, not because they care about the issue, because he's trying to sell his brand. And at the same time, this becomes a major talking point where instead right now, what should be being talked about is the fact that The COVID relief bill has not officially passed yet. It is now back in the House with the changes from the Senate. And where are the 6 progressive Democrats holding up the bill to make sure that the $15 minimum wage gets put back in there? I mean, the difference of what $15 minimum wage would mean for everybody, because
are we going to talk about Kyrsten Sinema?
Well, Kyrsten Sinema is definitely feeling the heat right now. And this is why everyone, and again, we supported force the vote on Medicare for all, but this is the big reason why doing this makes a lot of sense. Because Bernie decided to force the vote on the $15 minimum wage. You now have a whole bunch of people that they are now supposedly in the dark about, not getting exposed for their bad votes. Well, Kyrsten Sinema decided to vote on a $15 minimum wage.
She brought cake.
Yeah.
She brought
cake,
she had like an homage to Marie Antoinette. You know what? I think the people of Arizona should have that same homage and do with her as they did with Marie Antoinette, to be honest with you. I'd start building the guillotines, people. How dare her do that? Oh my God. To see some of these people, I just think really just, they never got their ass kicked when they were kids and they needed to. There are just certain people that just really needed to get a good ass kicking as a kid and didn't. And as a child of the 70s, I can tell you, it really often is a very valuable life lesson.
But her story is actually very interesting because evidently she started in the Green Party all the way back in 2004. She was a massive progressive who was for, she was an anti-war activist, was totally fine with working with anarchists and even communists and people like that in order to end the Middle East wars. But then she got elected into Congress, and then eventually she makes it to the Senate. And as a lot of people like to say, you don't change the Democratic Party. The Democratic Party changes you. And okay. And then, she ends up getting her, she got herself right, is basically what happened. But we're gonna start what is known as a labor series tonight. And we're gonna bring in
I'm gonna show my graphic. I'm gonna share my exciting graphic.
So we're going to bring in an awesome guest, our very first local labor leader, as I like to say. Very often we try to figure out, very often we try to figure out exactly where did everything stem from. Was there a moment in time where we can realistically say that everything changed for labor in this country? And I always point to President Reagan firing the air traffic controllers in August of 1981, and not a single union walked out on the job the next day to ensure that there would be solidarity with obviously people in the labor movement. And because that was not done, the Democratic Party completely took it on the chin. The Republican Party increased their strength. And so instead of trying to revitalize union power in this country, the Democrats abandoned that and got in bed with Wall Street. And this was around 1985, 1986.
And that brings us to where we are now.
So we are on the downward slope. Florida, of course, is a horrific state for labor because it is a right-to-work state. It's also been GOP dominated for over 2 decades. And so we're trying to really build a labor resurgence here in South Florida. That is obviously our goal. And the first
also I'd like to say this is a nonpartisan thing.
Yes.
And that is something, and that is something that is very important. And I think that, and when we talk about any chance of any third party being able to be successful, if they do not incorporate labor from both the left and the right sides of the social spectrum, they're not going to be able to be efficient. You're not going to get enough people. There needs to be a labor party, and it doesn't need to matter what your opinion on abortion is. And that's where people need, if people came together on those issues, we'd be infinitely better off than fighting about things like trans people using bathrooms and, all this nonsense.
But that is the whole essence of the way that this is done. It is done to distract and to not allow us to come together as an American people to fix this problem.
Yeah.
And we, I think, are slowly starting to get that. And I think with what's going on with the COVID relief bill, I think a lot of people are starting to catch on to that. Because as much as everyone wants to say, well, all the GOP voted against it, it doesn't matter because you will always have enough Democrats to vote against it too, to make sure you don't get what you need. So with that said, we're going to try to figure out a way to make this circumstance better.
We're going to build this coalition of people that support labor.
We are.
That's basically what we need to be doing and get all of those people on the same page. And yeah, I mean, so this was something that I thought about originally in terms of, and I'd still like to do this stuff about going out in the field and seeing what different people do, like almost like a, I don't know, career day kind of, thing, but doing a series that we would do in the field labor. And we do have a new video production intern that is going to be, helping me work on that. But so our very first labor guest, this is very cool, of course, because, anybody who knows me knows I have a thing for the firemen. It's a thing. So this one's really a cool way for me to start because I really can't, something about those boys in the uniforms. So we're going to start with our local head of the IAFF 4321 is the, yeah.
Yes.
I am definitely getting older. So Jason is someone who was very supportive when I was running. He definitely understands what is needed in terms of labor and is very aware that a lot of those needs are not being met here. So we're going to bring him on. We're going to talk about that.
Yes, we are.
Hi.
Good evening.
How are you?
Very good. Thank you both for having me.
Absolutely.
How's everything going, sir?
We're busy. The state of Florida, like you said, keeps locals extremely engaged at every turn. And it's very interesting right now in Tallahassee.
Yeah, there definitely is not a shortage of interesting stories to talk about. And since you did bring up Tallahassee, obviously a lot of people are focused on Governor DeSantis pushing this anti-protest bill. But what has been sort of the trajectory this first week from your perspective, as far as labor is concerned, from what you're seeing in Tallahassee?
Well, as you guys have hit on and spoke a little bit on, COVID has been a disastrous effect for many people. And the front line of nurses, the doctors, the police, and the fire and EMS, you would think that the requirement on those groups to respond during the pandemic, they wouldn't come off extremely as aggressive as they have had on the on legislation. They've looked to create a dues deduction bill that would create issues for members to be a part of a union. They've created a bill to come after the retirement of the men and women that one day are going to go ahead and look to meet the age and time requirements. They're looking to completely close down their retirement. So those are just some of the small things that is currently happening out of the Senate, and it's been very difficult.
It's funny when not funny, but it's sort of pathetic. I listen to this, and it's like you guys are just always on the defense. You're always on the defense. It's like all they're doing in Tallahassee is coming up with harder and harder and stricter laws to sort of reinforce their right to work, and just do things to sort of cut the you at the knees. And you're not even able to do anything proactive. It's almost like you guys are just constantly on the defensive of this type of legislation to take away, when instead you should be able to be having, being on the offense and getting stuff that you need.
I would agree. Working together in collaboration is something that only a couple legislators sometimes even understand and are even willing to discuss. It's great when we have friends on both sides of the aisle, but just like you said, wasting time in a defensive posture just for benefits of men and women, whether it's a cancer benefit, whether it's a retirement opportunity, something to these little circumstances that have been ingrained for years, and then they come back to the table. We're never able to really work together and work on community paramedicine for the residents of Florida. So things that we could really knock out of the park. You're right. We sort of round robin and circle the wagons quite frequently.
Yeah, it's you guys don't ever even have an opportunity to just sort of take a step back and think about ways to make things better, because you're so busy constantly just trying to maintain anything that you have. It's really quite pathetic. That's just Florida. I mean, it's particularly bad here. Particularly
in your line of work, which requires the utmost protection. And I think that's something that I'm not sure a lot of people really understand what it means to be a firefighter or a paramedic, and the constant fear of, not having enough to basically run the union as efficiently as possible. Can you talk about some of the effects that have, we'll say transpired? Obviously, we're constantly concerned about the effects of climate change, especially here in South Florida. Are there any ways that it directly affects your ability to do your job?
So it definitely increases call volume if the belief in climate change is identified, and you were to Google it, you would start to see sea rises, and you would see the flood zones. And if you look and do studies in just the last, I think it's only happened once ever before, where we ran out of names for hurricanes where they had to go to the Greek alphabet, right?
Yeah.
So with the climate change and flooding, that's a real big one here in Florida. And a lot of cities, a lot of municipalities are talking about what they have to do for the coastline. And what that really transpires in our job is, do we have the right equipment readily accessible to go ahead and make rapid rescues if in the event surges and rise in that type of tide changes happen? Are we ready? And do we have the logistics and the personnel that can meet the needs of, if it becomes swift water or anything else that essentially can be caused by that? So I would say it's absolutely a concern, and we take it very serious as we're watching different changes happening. So we're really engaged with FEMA, NOAA, and all these organizations that really sort of feed us intel so we can prepare. But it all comes down to partnerships with our municipality leaders, our commissioners, our senators, our mayors, our governor. So we're ready for the residents.
Yeah. I mean, to me, it's just a matter of when it's going to happen. At this point, I feel like our infrastructure in general is so woefully inadequate. I'm talking about more physical infrastructure, not people power. But like, to me, we could have what, years ago, a Category 1 hurricane that would come over us, and we would be like, yeah, whatever, that's fine. But now, because of climate change, it sits on top for so long, flooding. And our infrastructure, our pipes, our sewage, all of those things are so not maintained and are in such a bad way. And to me, all of those things will make your life harder.
Absolutely. And what's interesting, I speak about the floods, but if you were to look back just within the last 18 months, maybe go back just a little further than that, the weather is changing so much, and the water also at times, as we've seen, has dried so quickly at different times that it's created the brush to be so dry that a lightning storm will go ahead and create acres upon acres of fires. And just that piece of the job as well. Residents losing their homes, being able to put strike teams together throughout the state. I mean, that's been amazing in itself as well. In the Everglades, it's definitely something that, you're right. Having the right amount of personnel to put involved in these emergencies is also an issue of not having enough.
Right.
That's a very good point, Jason. And I think when we think about, what can we do to make your job easier? Because,
less cops, more firefighters,
well,
people.
That's not what I was alluding to.
That's what I was thinking. As soon as you were talking about reality, I'm thinking, defund the police.
That's a bad
increase
word.
The funding. I'm just saying, in my mind, I can see the money going from the blue to the red. I'm just thinking. Just thinking out loud.
I was just wondering what your thoughts are as far as the infrastructure goes, because it seems that we're severely outdated when it comes to our energy grid. And how much of a difference would it make if we were to really transition to much more of an alternative or even green energy grid that focused on solar, wind, geothermal? I mean, listen, we've even had a conversation about nuclear and whether or not that would be much more justifiable than anything related to, especially fracking and, of course, coal and natural gas. So
when they mess with the Everglades.
Yeah. So what are your thoughts on that?
Wow. So that goes real deep. So Turkey Point is one of the things I start thinking about when we think about energy, and I think about what it takes to be on the standby group for what it happens if that energy grid has an issue, and how many groups that will affect, and resources that have to be brought in to mitigate the emergency. So, I think that's a real profound question that I would have to really look into a little further, as far as with the change of energy I definitely would say this. In our career, we don't have one option that we can pull from. We have to have 3 or 4 options at any one time to pivot to. So I would say the same has to go with energy. You can't have just one focus point and all your eggs in one basket. Coming up on Easter, maybe that was a good little pun right there. But in general, having resources, and that may be other energies. Absolutely, I think it's very smart to think about and potentially be prepared for.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I mean, to me, we're just backwards. But I mean, I know that in the Everglades, obviously, they do control burns. I know that there are definitely, they do purposeful. I've seen it before. But I have noticed in the past few years that we've had increasing amounts of fires that are not those. Yes. That are going on out there. And I know that that is something that not only affects our air quality, but it obviously takes a lot of your manpower and people to be out there dealing with this. But that sort of leads me into the health issue, which is something that is exponentially affects people in your industry. And of course, we're big supporters of single payer Medicare for all. But can you talk about how healthcare is handled, or how little you get and what the fight is for you guys to get the kind of coverage that you need?
Yeah, so that's always a very frustrating point. Is the healthcare piece. One of the desires on a national level that we're really trying to work on sort of fits right into that same position, which is, the firefighters tend to be able to start a job early, around 20 years old, that they can get hired, and after the 25 years of service that they put in, they can leave at age 55 years old. So between 55 and 65 to receive any type of medical coverage, the cost is astronomical for those individuals. And that's even if they have decent health. And you figure by the time you do 25 years of service, yeah. God forbid, if you don't have a cancer, or if you don't have some sort of a PTSD piece, or something that potentially puts you into a state that your claim history is high, receiving some sort of favorable or fair cost for your medical is difficult. So we're hoping that we can get support on a national level to really work on that 10-year bracket of just someone that's given 25 years of service to be able to receive some sort of gap in that medical for all, almost that Medicaid, Medicare piece. I think it's a big concern, and I'll give you some examples. We were fortunate. Sometimes, I want to highlight the positives. The legislators got together with the cancer bill and found 21 cancers that if a firefighter receives while on the job, they're going to go ahead and hold the responsible party to the organization where they resided out of to follow through for that man or woman that caught one of those 21 cancers. Amazing, outstanding. The problem is now you have organizations that don't want to support a retiree that has just finished because they don't carry the organization's medical coverage. So now, too bad, too sad, they're not covered. They're on their own with lung cancer. It's sad. These are the type of woes. Even though there's good legislation, there's holes in the legislation.
Right.
Now, when you negotiate your annual budget, is that done directly with the local chapter, or is that all, does it go higher than that? And if so, how much of the budget has to be allocated towards healthcare? Because one of the key ingredients, and I think one of the easiest selling points of a universal system, is to not have to have it budgeted in with any union going forward. So how does it work exactly with you guys?
Okay, so great question. Our area for Broward County and the organization that I'm the labor leader over, we negotiate. Usually we are able to do about a 3-year contract at the max. Sometimes you'll have a 1-year, depending, and if the right individuals can get to the table, you can usually get a 3-year contract. And what happens is during that piece, it's only for that entity. So each municipality and or county government, they will go ahead and negotiate their own contract with their respective organization. No different than myself. So that's the first part. The second part is healthcare is always a part of that. And it's funny you say that. There's 21 articles. We actually have just shy of, let's say, 48. The organization that I work for has chosen one of those articles, which is insurance. It's always the topic because insurance is always rising. And, when I got on the job, there were benefits because of the pay and because of the circumstances that you signed up for. One of the benefits would be some sort of insurance. Now, whether it would be free or you pay, it would still be there, and the benefits over the years have absolutely changed, where at one time, there wasn't, from one city that you may live in Broward County to the next, you may be out of network. So things have changed wildly since I've been a part of just the organization I have, just shy of 19 years now. And being on the board, here's some of the problems with healthcare. When it is managed by any entity, money is where everything's at, right? So if I have a lot of funding and a lot of people, I get to negotiate benefits, and I get to go ahead and do, studies, and companies get to come and tell me why they're the best. So what ends up happening at our level, we really don't get to pick the Blue Cross or Blue Shield or the Aetnas or maybe some of the premier organizations out there. We get to be told this is who the organization goes with. And so then we don't even get to negotiate benefits. What we usually negotiate is what the cost is going to be based upon putting to the member of the organization. That's what we really get to negotiate, and how much is going to be levied on them based upon how much the organization is going to pick up. And that's ultimately how much, even if, and sometimes the world gets this a little bit confused when they give a cost of living raise. If in the event they say, oh, well, they got a percentage raise of 2%, but if they raised your insurance where you're paying $200 or $300 that month, you really got nothing. You got no raise. But people don't see that,
Yeah. No, I mean, you guys are fighting for scraps. Like I find this so, this is sad and it's pathetic. And this is time for a general strike to me. I mean, because this is an across the board problem. I think different issues affect different unions, and obviously different types of work areas have different, there's different technical things, but this is an across the board labor problem. The fact that you even have to be one of these 21 types of cancers that we cover, that's insane to me. It's like you're sick, you get help. That's how that works. This is the fact that you have to have a list of what is acceptable cancers is just people. This is unacceptable. This is just unacceptable.
Yeah. And I think it's a bigger problem when, we think about certain lines of work, and I can only imagine how difficult it is because unfortunately politics does end up playing a very big role. One thing I noticed that I always thought stood out the most, particularly when we had the 2016 Democratic primary between Bernie Sanders and Hillary Clinton, anytime the union allowed the rank and file to vote, they always voted for Bernie Sanders. Anytime the union only allowed the board to vote, they voted for Hillary Clinton. I'm curious, when it comes to dealing with pro-labor issues, how much of a stark difference is it between, let's say, union bosses versus union rank and file? Because I would imagine, just based on the experience that we had when Jen ran for Congress, that seemed to probably be as big a sticking point as any between whether a labor organization or even a movement, if you will, was willing to get behind her. Rank and file saw things one way, the people at the top saw it another way. And
they ghost us though. So we don't get to have contact with rank and file. We don't get to even make a case. We don't even get to present it. It's sort of like they're just steered in the direction of management, and management is.
So from your perspective, why do you see that happening? Because again, it could be any circumstance. I understand completely. Sometimes you have to play politics. Sometimes candidates are not viable, so there's no sense in putting political capital behind them. Totally understand that. But it does seem to me that one of the big problems in terms of really achieving some type of a labor movement is that there seems to be a lot of stagnation at the top. Can you speak on that, however which way, you feel comfortable with addressing it?
Yeah, sure. So I would say this, the International Association of Firefighters, if you were to have been able to follow it here not too recently, we just had a brand new general president get elected. And that individual will be essentially been voted and will be the new president of the International Association of Firefighters for the first time in just shy of maybe 24 years.
Wow.
So when you think about that in itself, and then the general secretary treasurer is going to change as well. So what happens at the highest level, and as it comes down to the local levels, like even myself, right? What the union, is it fair to say bosses or officers, what ends up happening is the relationships with the political candidates, you get to engage more than essentially sometimes the rank and file. And what ends up happening, the rank and file, in whatever the respective discipline is, they're doing the job. They're the boots on the ground. They're the ground and pound, making sure that the 911 calls are answered, the people in the hospitals are getting seen, whatever the respective discipline is. But then you have the other voted for labor leaders that are engaging with the all of the facets of the mayors, the commissioners, the senators, and all of that type of level of people. And what ends up happening is sometimes throughout their career, as they're starting to come up, they end up doing firefighter, and I'll only speak on firefighter specific positive bills. They either put their name on a bill against their party, they stood up or stand next to for particular items that you were going for. And what ends up happening outside of building either a friendship and or trust, there ends up being a partnership. And so that's probably what you see at those levels sometimes, where the administration that's essentially elected ends up having relationships, good or bad. I can understand where both sides sometimes wonder, how come we can't break that threshold, or what the other side is it's time for a change. How do we initiate it? Sometimes those relationships, it's hard to turn away and look at a friend that's been positive on your needs, but maybe on the global aspect has not met the need. So a lot of people are like, hey, why are you going that direction? So I hope that answers it, but that's what I see from my perspective.
And also I want to be clear that our issue, at least here locally, has not been with IAFF, has been with our AFL-CIO. So what we have, and I don't know if people understand how this works, that there's individual unions, and then they're all part of the AFL-CIO, or not all, but a lot of them are part of the AFL-CIO, which is just this additional layer of bureaucracy that stands between rank and file and their elected officials. It's just this one more layer of person that's political. And in Broward, that person is an impediment to progress. And that's just all there is to it. And so that is what I find the barrier, is not with you, but with that.
And I do think that the bigger issue lies with the fact that there have been many instances where, bosses will side with, dare I say, even anti-labor representatives. And that's when it becomes a very dicey situation. Could be something as simple as a representative who supports the Trans-Pacific Partnership.
Yeah.
Or, simply, has, the finances that they take in are from horrifically anti-labor, organizations.
Mm-hmm.
And so when that ends up happening, then you're really caught between a rock and a hard place. But there is sort of this, hierarchy, respect to those that are at the top, and not necessarily wanting, to start, a political fight, because it's already hard enough to deal with the fact that we are a right to work state, that, it's, as the Firefighters Union has said, it's not collective bargaining, it's collective begging. And when you have to do that on top of everything else, it does make this a lot more precarious. So I'm curious as to what we can do, whether through GenCorps or just locally, what can we be doing to really help build the labor movement in South Florida in conjunction with what you guys do?
Oh, wow. So I would say this. One of the things that comes to my mind is right now, the biggest thing for any Florida, for any county or municipality that's a part of the FRS in our state of Florida, one of the big things right now is we are truly fighting for our life to save our retirement, period. Okay. That's number one. The legislators out of the Senate, out of Estero, that senator has come after retirement, and that would be number one. That's number one. And if
that's on the table right now, that's what they're pushing right now.
That's right now.
So we're going to need people to be contacting their legislators.
This is GOP State Senator Estero is his name?
Well, out of Estero, Mr. Rodriguez.
Out of Estero.
Out of Estero, Florida. Yeah.
So yeah. Who goes after the firefighters? Isn't that like? It's such poor form. There's no way for that to ever look good on him. Like, I don't understand who supports that.
Somebody with a lot of money who wants to see the pension fund. This is like a Gordon Gekko Wall Street situation. This is basically, you've got an overcrowded pension fund and they want the money, and that's it. This is greed. This is full blown greed.
I'm disgusted.
And they know that money is there, and they know that if they get the right bill passed through Tallahassee, they'll get the money, and that's it.
Right.
Right.
And we're fighting for our families and the workers. Honestly, I couldn't be more sincere when I say we're in a full-fledged fight to just maintain. And if you were to say, what are you maintaining? We're just trying to maintain that firefighters don't have to be 63 years old doing this job. I mean, the job is a young person job, and after 25 years of being 55, I mean, I know neither one of you are 55, and could you imagine from being 55? You're not there. You're not there. But I mean, think about going to, you name it, Hollandale Beach. Choose Hollandale Beach, a high rise, and a 50, 60-year-old male or woman has to go and climb those stairs and recover people, bring them. It's not
with 75 pounds of gear, mind you.
75 plus, correct.
Yeah. No, it's meant for young people, and it's our job to then take care of those people that do that, after the fact.
I mean, I have a very good friend.
It's like, it's service.
Now, I have a very good friend who's now a firefighter up in Jupiter, and he loves the job, and he's just a few years younger than me, but he's not going to want to be doing this. Again, the job is really meant, in a way.
There's parts of that job, I'm sure, administrative parts of that job that are suitable for older people.
But it's a funnel. Yes, the physical wear and tear of being a fireman, it's a 25 to 30-year job. And if you're doing it past that point, if you're not in an administrative role, it's beyond taxing. And I work out and I take care of myself, and I can't imagine the difficulty, even when you're young, carrying around 75 pounds of gear on top of potentially having to carry somebody. You might have to carry somebody who's 200 pounds.
Oh, absolutely.
And the odds of that are going up with obesity. Trust me. I mean,
so the firemen carry with all the gear on.
Even.
It's not easy, and then you have the wear and tear and all that stuff. And the idea that they want to come after this pension fund is just, again, it's the lowest form of human greed, because they are not anyone who's ever done physical labor in their life.
I just want to say, John, can you put up the link to the Florida legislature to the directory, so that we can have the link, people can click on it or whatever. And we just need people to be talking to their legislators and, flooding their phone lines and emailing them, because this is really not okay.
And to do a quick check-in, as we like to do, because I've got the radio charm, if you will. We are speaking with Jason Smith, who is the president of the IAFF. That is the International Firefighters Union. And of course, it is the local chapter 4321 here in Broward County. We do have a question I don't know how much you necessarily, I mean, obviously Tallahassee takes precedence. I don't know how much you pay attention to DC politics, but obviously there is the PRO Act that is on the table right now. It seems to have some, pretty good positives as it relates to labor. I don't know if you've, dived into it too much, but would obviously like to get your feedback if that is something that you've taken a look at.
Yeah, I've gotten a brief on it from our international district president, and from what I understand, is this the bill that provides the protection? So for those forming or the labor movement,
form a union without being union busted, so to speak.
Correct. It's huge. It's a huge one for us, and I'll tell you what. And if I understand right, if it would pass, it would help out every state in the union. I mean, if you really think about it, you have Carolinas right now that can't literally talk to their employer about healthcare issues for their men and women. In Carolinas right now, they can't. At least I'm able to broker that conversation through collective bargaining, but they can't even do that in Carolina. I mean, that is a huge positive, and it is not, and it protects that union busting piece, which here's what's funny. At the state level, currently right now, they are having a dues deduction bill that they're coming off of and coming after. And what would happen is it's a form of trying to shut down organized labor. And what the current bill and I know this was asked about in reference on the national level, but at the local level, the state of Florida, there's something very close where they're actually coming after trying to shut down dues deductions, which is very interesting, where this is looking to protect the union worker.
This is one of the reasons why, obviously when it comes to labor, the Democratic side is obviously better than the GOP side. But when it comes to corporate special interest money in politics, which is still the number one obstacle that we have to deal with on both sides of the aisle, the significance of something as simple as the $15 minimum wage at the federal level would supersede any of the screwery we are monetized. We have to be careful of our language on the show. But the effery, if you will, that is going on with somebody like State Senator Jeff Brandes out in St. Petersburg, who's basically trying to put every single regulation, amazing the GOP wants to regulate, of anyone who would be able to achieve the $15 minimum wage. If we had a federal law, federal mandate of the $15 minimum wage, then it wouldn't matter what they're doing here at the state level. They would have to adhere to the federal law. And so the same is true here with the PRO Act. Because this is a union-busting, anti-worker, anti-labor state.
How is that not a 10th Amendment issue?
You're the lawyer. She's the lawyer.
It just seems like there's a potential 10th Amendment problem here. I mean, again, I am completely opposed to right to work laws, but I don't know. They will argue that there's a 10th Amendment problem with them doing that because states like Florida will not like that at all. And
Florida, in many ways, is ground zero for a real populist, labor uprising. Yeah. The state is built on
general strike.
It's hospitality and service. That is this state in a nutshell. And the fact that the labor laws are so horrifically bad. I mean, look, GOP domination for over 2 decades. That's, and especially the GOP in this state, because I come from New Jersey. I've lived in New York. The GOP is rough in a lot of parts of the country, but in Florida, they are so rabidly anti-labor.
Yeah.
It is just, it's unbelievable.
It's not populist here. No, it's just not.
Really, really not. But we are trying to change that narrative, and I do think something like the PRO Act would supersede a lot of the difficulties that you do have to deal with on the regular in Tallahassee.
Yes, I would agree with you. This would be a definitely line in the sand at a national level, letting these local, state leaders recognize, hey, there's somebody looking out for the labor, and that's really important.
Yeah.
I do think, we've done a great job and we've covered a lot of topics here without having to dive into really the political side of things. But I am curious from your perspective, what do you think locals or even the rank and file can do going forward to get behind candidates or even representatives who are champions of labor without having to worry about the people at the tippy top playing big party politics and superseding the needs of the rank and file? What do you think could be done going forward to try to alleviate some of those pressures?
So I'm glad you asked that, and I had no clue you were going to ask that question like that. And here's what I will tell you. Here's honestly a conversation I had just recently with a state representative and the firefighters, Florida professional firefighter side. It is firefighters, and I speak from my point of view. Firefighter needs is the individual that's going to be going from here forward, whether we send them to Tallahassee or whether we send them to Washington. What are their views, and are they firefighter views? And the big picture of everything else, we don't get in the same lane of the cops. We can't get in the same lane as the teachers. They're all important to our society, but I can only focus for the men and women that I represent, firefighter pieces. And if that individual meets that need for the firefighters, then I think what you're going to see is we're going to absolutely grab them and push them forward, because sometimes promises are nice, and actions are better than promises. And I think we've seen that. We're recognizing that at our state level, and it hurts. It hurts when you put people in places and in trust versus for the promise versus seeing the actions ahead of time. So there's a lot of young legislators that are looking to represent the residents of their respected areas, whether it's going to be on a local level or on a national level. And I would say that if they are going to align with the firefighter needs, I think that they found friends.
That's great to hear. Let's have a little fun. Obviously, it's a little difficult with COVID right now, but what's sort of the wins and losses when it comes to the police versus the firefighters? You do like a softball game, a basketball game. How does it usually? Do you guys just have
firefighters are so much cooler?
Well, that's again.
Much cooler.
We're not here to diss our boys in blue, but we obviously we know we have issues with law enforcement and there are things that need to change. But with that said, how does that unfold? Do you guys have like an annual picnic? What's the deal?
So prior to COVID, there would be all type of neat programs we had put together, and one that was put together not too long before COVID was a shooting opportunity, and we weren't invited back because the firefighters actually beat the cops in the shooting.
I'm not surprised at all. I'm not surprised at all. I'm just not.
That gives a new meaning to "we'll give anybody a badge and a gun if they sign."
Yes.
It's completely the training is so completely woefully different in just general that that doesn't surprise me at all. No.
Yes. No. There has been tournaments, like you said, softball. There has. There's been basketball games in the past. They've done hockey. And luckily for
that was
the
my
fire,
cousin. That was my cousin did the hockey. He's all about hockey down in Miami. He is definitely. If there's anybody who's doing, he's with Miami-Dade, but yes, and all about, and we talked about that when I met with their union down there, because one of the guys there actually played hockey with.
I just happen to, I happen to come from Jersey and especially cities like New York and Chicago. The police versus firefighters like get-togethers are fierce. They are very fierce. It is a real rivalry, and there's no question that, listen, it's friendly competition, but the police really don't like it when the firefighters beat them.
No, God, no. So we call it hose versus the cuffs. So that's usually how it goes. So it's really neat, and it's always great to rub it in their face that number one, they were in the wrong line for employment, and number two, we just beat them. It's always good.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is a real thing, even at the local level, even in the county level. So we're all here to have a little bit of fun. Obviously, we are extremely grateful that you came on tonight. Any final thoughts that you want to share? Obviously, we think the world of what you do, and obviously the fact that you've been very forthcoming about the need for change down here, and the kind words you've shared about Jen obviously means a lot. But we obviously want to do what we can on your end. You gave us some information. We're going to look into this bill. Senator Rodriguez
we're
from
going
Estero.
to be encouraging everybody to be contacting legislators.
Yeah, we can definitely turn this into something for sure. And no one, if you basically just, the headline just basically becomes, they're trying to take the firefighters' pension away. I don't think there's anybody who's going to be too enthusiastic about that.
That's what I'm saying. It's a really bad look. Like there's just, I don't know how that just can't look good.
No, but then I think it gets back to the bigger picture, which is we end up in this bubble of thinking that everyone is paying attention to politics.
Well, that's the problem.
Very small portion of people actually know what's going on.
They slide things through and people don't even realize it. That's why, and that's what we need to do. That's our job.
That is our job. Our job is to make people aware, because as I'm sure you've encountered, most people, they're like, I had no idea they were trying to cut the firefighters'
so let people
pension.
start calling their legislators. Let them be answering their phones.
Yes. And this is a very clear-cut issue, because everybody of every political stripe likes their firefighters.
Yeah.
Period. So this is not a gray area. No. And it's not, and again, if, Jason, one last thing I think we should touch upon, because I don't think enough people really understand that your union also includes paramedics and the importance of that particular profession that never gets talked about enough. Yeah. Can you talk about that real quick?
Yeah, absolutely. So the paramedics, and we do have some single certified that are currently on the job. Our system years ago transitioned from a 3-tier system. So you would have a private medical group show up. You would have your county EMS, paramedic, EMTs, and then your county fire. So when we merged in the 90s, now it's considered fire rescue. But, you know, we're one of the last that actually in Broward that actually has single certifieds. So those paramedics jobs are at equal to the fire group that's going on. So their certification does not allow them to ride on a fire truck, but it's on the ambulance, on what we call the rescue truck. And, you know, these are some of the most advanced, aggressive. These are the individuals that are field training officers. Yeah. They actually will go ahead, and when you're in dire need, this is their niche. We've recognized that. We've not put them in a corner. We've not asked them or hurt them to retire through transition, through change. We recognize their skill as well as being cross-trained, but they really go to the next level. And let me tell you, you know, IVs, dealing with individuals with PTSD in the back of these rescues, and all of a sudden they go ahead and their mental incapacity at that moment changes, and we have to give them different type of medicines to not only protect ourselves but protect them and or their family, depending on the environment. It's an amazing job that our single certifieds as well as our cross-trained have to do. But as a paramedic, they are seeing the worst of the worst on a daily basis. Think about all calls, and that's what they're seeing and they're responding to. The kids, the elders, the vehicle accidents, the overdoses, you name it, they're right there.
And considering we are the opioid capital of the United States down here in South Florida, I can only imagine how you got to have
shortage of ODs.
Yeah, you definitely got to have very thick skin to be a paramedic. No question about it.
Yeah,
special group.
It is a very special group, and obviously so are the firefighters. And again, we're speaking with Jason Smith, who's the president of the IAFF Local-4321. Very easy one to remember.
Yeah.
So we will love to have you back in the near future. Obviously, we've got a lot of work to do on your behalf. We're going to look into this horrific anti-union bill by Senator Rodriguez, who's attempting to take the firefighters' pension away.
Yeah.
Not cool. So we will be looking into that. And obviously, we're going to be seeing you down the road. And we can't thank you enough for coming on the show this evening.
Thank you both. We appreciate it as a local. And just understand, for you both, as well as all your listeners, we are supportive. We are for you. You need us. You call. Our number's easy. 911 will be there.
On that note, I can't think of a better way to end the segment.
Thank you. Have a great day. Thank you.
You do the same, sir. Take care, buddy.
Bye.
So I had this really interesting thought.
That was a perfect finish.
But yes,
we are here for you. Just dial 911. Oh my God, that's great.
Here's the I was thinking this funny. So for me, like in real life, like I love me firemen. I don't particularly care for the thing. It is. I don't particularly care for cops. It's not my thing. But yet in the TV universe, I only watch the cop shows. In fact, I watch Chicago PD. I will not watch Chicago Fire and Chicago Med because they freak me out and gross me out, and disgusting things happen that I can't deal with because it's just too stressful. The cop stuff doesn't bother me, but whenever I'm watching like the fight, like it causes me so much anxiety because, and it's kind of, a lot of it is gross.
Well, I was young at the time, but Backdraft was a very popular
freaked
movie.
me out.
Very popular movie.
Oh yeah, and plus fires and burning, and I can't.
Well, Ron Howard is still lauded to this day for what a technical achievement that movie was. And ironically, if you remember, at Universal Studios in Orlando, they actually do have. I don't know if they still have it to this day.
No, I think they might have changed it. Like I think it's become something else.
But they actually had the actual sound stage set up of what it was like, because the penultimate scene in the film, they recreated the inside of a burning building.
It's very cool.
Very cool.
But just the thing is that it freaks me out. It's just one of those things that freaks me out. And so the shows, I don't like it.
Listen, it's very strange. It's one of our most appreciated professions, and it's one of our most underappreciated professions.
Oh, please.
It's a very weird dynamic.
I'm telling you, we need to take the money from the police and distribute it to the firefighters and the teachers.
Firefighters, for the most part, overall, are generally salaried well. Are they protected well?
No. But none of us are. I mean, that's the thing. So, having something like healthcare will exponentially help firefighters, Correct. But that's obviously something that
that's also from a statistical standpoint, I think is exceptionally important, is for people to understand that, let's say you're in you work for a good ladder, you're making, let's say, $75,000, $80,000 a year.
Which, by the way, that's not great money for people that are doing that job.
But that job should obviously pay more. But let's just say, for the sake of argument, that, $80,000, reasonable living. How much of that would increase in terms of a person's bottom line if they didn't have to allocate, 10, 15% of that money to go to healthcare?
Well, right. But then there's just, they have additional health issues for doing stuff that other people don't do.
So the idea that we now, and while we're talking about it, I might as well look it up. So Senator Rodriguez.
It's one of those things that's just unbelievable to me that people are not getting this.
So, it's not Jose Javier Rodriguez, because this is Estero, Florida.
Yeah.
Estero.
Yeah.
Ray Rodriguez. Okay.
There you go. You need to look this guy up.
I need to look him up. Oh, yeah, he's a winner. So, of course, he represents Lee County. All right. So, this guy clearly.
It's too teeny.
Yeah. You don't have
you need to find a better picture.
Well, you don't want to blow him up.
No, I don't want to blow that up.
So he's from Pensacola, 50 years old. And he's.
You don't make that any bigger.
He's from the west coast of Florida. And so now
he's on our poop list.
Which is interesting, because he's actually in his. So now he's in his last term as a state senator. And we all know that they're going to look to make some type of a landmark move, because usually a guy at this age, being in his last year in the Florida Senate,
you have to figure it all out.
Yeah,
right?
He's definitely going to look to probably try to get himself a congressional. Oh yes,
definitely. This guy could definitely be a potential bootlicker.
John, we've got our bootlicker for Thursday.
That's a good one, right? Yeah, we can use this guy as our bootlicker for Thursday. Yeah, no. Let's give him a little bit of popularity.
Yeah, so if he really wants,
I never heard of him before. Let's do that.
Now, if you want to go after firefighters, this is definitely one way to make yourself famous. But again, the only reason somebody like this puts a bill like this forward is because somebody is offering him some type of a sweetheart deal, whether it's heavy doses of campaign finance, if he is planning on running, let's say, for U.S. Congress, whatever his goal is, post his Senate, his final Senate term, they make these. It's always dangerous when they're in their last year, because they don't have to worry about the next election and whose bridge. Well,
and that's one of the problems people have with term limits. That is one of the issues that the progressives do have with term limits.
So that essentially you get to that last term and it's bets are off. I don't have to worry about my next election. I just do whatever I want.
Yeah.
Maybe. And maybe he isn't looking to run for Congress, and maybe he's looking to get a job with some major consulting firm that wants to tap in to this overcrowded pension fund, and their goal is to make sure that they're getting at least a part of it. This is no different than trying to privatize.
No, we're gonna let's make him famous.
Yeah.
Let's make him famous.
Hey, Mr. Rodriguez, would you like to come on the podcast and defend your decision to try to go after the firefighters?
We should reach out to him.
Saying.
John, you should send him an email.
Yeah.
Send him an email and tell him that we're interested in this piece of legislation. Would he like to come on and explain his position?
Oh, well, and like I said, a lot of these things are able to get through because people are simply not aware or not paying attention. Well, they're going to be paying attention as long as we have this podcast.
I'm getting a yellow vest. We need yellow vests. I'm serious. We're getting pretty damn close
at this point.
If we had them in our cars, I do think we would see that. I do. I
think in France.
No, they come with the cars. They
come
with the cars. So everyone has them. That's why it's a thing. They would never do that now here.
No.
That'll never happen in a million years. But I got to tell you, a general strike is getting, it's really in order, people. It really is in order. If all of your firefighters and your teachers and everybody just decided to not go to work one day, that would change some things.
Well, that's no different than why all the unions really needed to walk out on the job when Reagan fired the air traffic controllers.
But they didn't.
They didn't, and now we are where we are. But that doesn't mean that change can't happen. And that's why if they do unionize in Bessemer, Alabama, that could really set the precedent for the entire country.
When is that? When is that vote? I thought it was happening.
I think it's an ongoing thing right now.
And so how long of a period of time are we looking at?
I don't know.
This is a very big deal. That's another thing, people. We need to be paying attention to what's going on in Alabama.
So what do we have coming up?
Never thought I'd hear myself say that.
Yeah, well, listen, sometimes these things happen in the most unprecedented places, which again, who would think that a state like Alabama might actually be the bastion for, pro-labor movement that could start all over again. Who knows?
And, our friend in Floribama, Bo, has definitely been talking it up quite a bit and putting out the support for the union in Alabama.
Absolutely. And why wouldn't you? I mean, it could really change things. And it's just so amazing when you see how people get so defensive about a $15 minimum wage, thinking that that's a bad idea. And, how are small businesses going to survive? If you can't afford to pay your workers $15 an hour, then maybe you don't have a very good business.
And I actually would like to sort of have a caveat to that, which is I understand that to some extent. And I do. And I know people that are small business owners that they don't support it. But I would like to think that we could come up with a solution that would subsidize and help small business owners so that this wasn't a burden for them.
Correct.
I also think that when you do things like give people single payer health care, and small business owners don't have to worry about those kinds of things either, that there are ways for us to subsidize and alleviate the burden on small businesses while simultaneously paying people a living wage. I don't like that those are presented as an either or. I think we can do both, because clearly I understand that our friend, Stephen Korka of Korka Comics, he's a small business owner. He is opposed to the $15 minimum wage because he knows what that would do to his business. And I can't help but think that clearly his situation is different than that of, say, Target.
So then what you need to have are certain requirements that would meet that $15 minimum wage threshold.
Yes. I mean, we don't have a problem means testing people to get money. Why can't we means test people to
to me, that makes a lot more sense. So for example, if you have a business that's less than 10 employees or something like that, then maybe it wouldn't make sense, or maybe there would be certain, again.
That's what I'm saying, but there's something we could figure out. This is not rocket science.
And not only that, but it's supposed to be a 4-year phase-in period.
Yeah, but I just think that there's got to be a way. I'm confident of this, actually, because other countries have figured it out.
Correct.
This is how I know it's possible. There is definitely a way to give a $15 minimum wage on a national level and yet help and protect our small business owners and make it so that it is not the burden on them.
1 year.
So I'm just saying there's a way to do it.
7 to 9 to 11 to 13 to 15.
And that's still ridiculous. Honestly, we should be able to have a minimum wage that is in line with productivity, which would be about $24 or so.
Isn't that something?
And it still shouldn't affect businesses.
Yes. And it's such a big deal that we're not able to push it through.
Right.
Yet, and again, hyperinflation has played a role. We have just tax cuts after you wouldn't necessarily need a $15 minimum wage if you reversed the top marginal tax rate back to where it belongs, which is 72%. Today, it's stuck at 39%. It was as low as 28% at one time. But prior to Reagan, this is one of the signature things of his presidency, is that he lowered the top marginal tax rate to 50% in 1983 and then down to 28% in 1986. The first tax cut we all understood, but anyone who understands how markets move, bull markets, which are hot, bear markets, which are cold, you always raise taxes in bull markets. Always. You lower taxes, you reduce taxes in bear markets. That is how it's always worked the most effective. But in the world we live in today, you only do tax cuts. Only.
Yes. Well, because they're hoarding and hoarding. They're just hoarders.
Correct.
They're just a bunch of hoarders.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know why this isn't something that's talked about more. You always just see them go back and forth on that issue. And I just don't understand, why wouldn't we be able to subsidize that and make that easier for small businesses to accommodate?
Well, that's really the whole essence of this.
Because wouldn't we want to be proponents of that? Wouldn't we want to be supporting our small business owners? Wouldn't we want people to be entrepreneurial? I mean, I know that's crazy talk.
No, again, we do, but the people at the top do not.
Well,
they want to live like kings.
I am very confident that there is a way that can happen. I'm very confident in it. I mean, I really feel it's possible.
Well, we're going to do everything we can in our power to help the local Broward firefighters.
Absolutely.
And I would imagine that this would be helping all of the firefighters.
It's the state. This is a state issue.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Which also ridiculous that's even we're having this discussion. Is just crazy.
And it just goes to show you how little our local officials truly care about this issue.
Why aren't they talking about this?
I've never heard them say a word. I wouldn't know. How would I know? The only reason I do know is because, and we know, is because somebody who is working in labor, whatever movement labor that exists in the state, would be allowing us to be made aware of this, because there are tons of bills that go on all the time, especially in a state like Florida.
Yeah.
But a bill like this should not slip through the cracks. Now it's definitely not going to slip through the cracks, and we're going to make it so that it is a big talking point.
It should be a big talking point.
Maybe so big that we are going to make this fella the bootlicker of the week.
Well, yeah, no, he definitely should.
Pretty easy to do that. So
then we could talk about it on Thursday.
With that said, I think we're good. I think we had a good abbreviated show tonight. I think we touched on a lot of good things. Thursday, what do we have coming up?
I'm not sure. You ask me, John, what do we have? I feel like that's such a game show thing. John, what do we have on Thursday?
Yeah, what's on tap, John? No, I think we have we have that lovely lady who's with Nina Turner.
You say that like that's a couple.
No, she's her business partner.
All right, we're gonna find out.
Yes, John will be letting us know. But on Thursday, obviously, we'll have our regular news and amuse. We'll have our bootlicker of the week.
And I just don't really know who our guest is. I don't. But I do want to once again say March 20th, 2 to 6, we are doing a Pardon Assange live stream telethon. Katie Halper is co-hosting that with me. We have amazing guests lined up. We just found out that Chris Hedges is going to be coming on. But yeah, we've got Lee Camp, we've got Ron Placone, Kate Willett.
Jennifer Farmer is our
for Thursday. Okay, but you guys, I have a lot of really cool. Jordan Cheriton, Ryan Knight. We have a lot of really cool people that are going to be coming on. And while our purpose is to promote everybody reaching out and calling about pardoning Assange, we're not going to just be solely speaking repeatedly about the same thing for 4 hours. So I want to be clear, like we'll have varied discussions and maybe even a good comedy bit might be able to get thrown into the mix. So it'll be fun. And we want everybody to contact the the Attorney General's office, the Department of Justice, and be basically flooding them and Biden's office. But apparently Biden has shut down the public comment ability. So there's no, that's what John was saying, that he shut that down, which that's very democratic of them. But basically
that's not really much of a surprise.
No. But we will have all our ducks in a row for that and where people need to reach out. But yeah, so our purpose will be promoting pardoning Assange, but we will not solely be discussing pardoning Assange. I just want to make that clear because I thought, does it really sound like, because at that, we don't need to do that. We'll talk about a bunch of different things, but we will go back and forth with please contact your representative. Please contact the Department of Justice. Please tell them we do not want them to extradite Julian Assange.
And so on Thursday, we will be speaking with Jennifer R. Farmer, who has written the book First and Only, A Black Woman's Guide to Thriving at Work and in Life.
Ooh.
And in honor, of course, of International Women's Day.
Well, it's Women's Month.
Women's Month.
The truth is, every month should be Women's Month.
So, yeah, Jen's
I'm just saying.
Jen's
I don't know why.
Feminist and
no.
I
I think it's important. We joke about it, but I think it's important from a educational, historical perspective to use these things as opportunities to educate people. That's really what I like about it. So whether it's, when you do Black history, yeah, I think that should just be included in history, but to focus on it for a month, at least at a minimum, people are getting going out of their way to learn about things, or it's something. It's something.
Yeah, but we're moving in the right direction. So hope to see you guys all on Thursday. Remember to subscribe to the channel, like the video, and obviously go and watch as many clips and let the ads run. And if you'd like to become a patron of our channel, go to patreon.com/generational change. We appreciate you guys.
Peace. See, when you copy that